I ultimately made the scammer who stole my deposit pay me double. And it all started with a simple Craigslist ad and a Black Eyed Peas song. It was November of 2009. And I was in a new city. Jamming too. I got a feeling by the Black Eyed Peas while hunting for a cheap apartment. My search led me to a promising ad on Craigslist. And I quickly set up a viewing. The landlady, let's call her Sharon, was a portly woman with a sharp Betty Page haircut. But I wasn't there to make friends. I was there for a cheap room. The place wasn't much to look at. But the price was right. So I told her I was interested. She said the place was mine if I could get her the deposit by the end of the day. Sweet. I raced to the bank and pulled out the $450 she needed, half a month's rent. We both signed a standard lease agreement. When I asked for a key, she said it would be a couple of days because the current tenant was still moving their things out. At that moment, Sharon thought she had won. Another sucker. Another $450 in the bag. She had no idea that this particular sucker was about to become the architect of her downfall. For the time being, I was crashing on a buddy's couch. So I just spent the next few weeks exploring the new city. Enjoying my time. A couple of days went by. And I hadn't heard from Sharon. I started to get frustrated and left a few salty voicemails. But I was completely ghosted. Finally, a voicemail appeared. It was her. Apologizing and saying she couldn't rent the place to me after all. The anger started to bubble up. But I'm a pretty cool-headed guy. So I channeled it. I dove into research. Learning about my rights as a tenant in this unfamiliar city. That's when I found it: if a landlord backs out of a signed lease without a legally valid reason, the other party is entitled to double the deposit they paid. Suddenly, the math was simple. She didn't just owe me $450. She owed me $900. I launched a new campaign of messages and emails. But again, nothing. Complete radio silence. I was fed up. I had just accepted a new job that wouldn't start for another week or so, leaving me with plenty of free time around the third week of November. This is where my path diverged from the other victims. While they may have been consumed by frustration, I channeled my anger into action. This reveals Sharon's greatest miscalculation: she assumed all her victims would be too disheartened or uninformed to fight back. A fatal flaw that ultimately sealed her fate. I hopped on a bus, bought a magazine, and set up a stakeout at the bus stop right across the street from the rental house. I just sat there and waited. For a couple of hours. I waited. And man, was it worth it. I watched her showing the exact same unit to another unsuspecting person. I kept my cool, waiting for her to finish with her newest target before I made my way across the street to confront her. The second she saw me, she launched into a frantic tirade about how the previous tenant had changed their mind and blah. 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 I'd heard enough. I planted my feet, squaring my stance directly in front of this flustered charlatan. Her excuses died in her throat as she saw the look on my face. The panic began to flicker in her eyes. I let the silence hang for a second before I spoke. My voice calm but cold. "Now you listen to me," I said. "You will get me $900. As required by law. By the end of today. Or I will go directly to the police station and let them deal with you." She turned white as a sheet. For a second, I genuinely thought she was going to be sick right there on the lawn. "Hold on," she stammered. "I'll get you your money." She hurried upstairs, The unit was a basement suite in the house she lived in, and came back down with a messy wad of cash. "Here," she said, practically shoving the money into my chest. "This is ruining my Christmas. But here. Thank you. Good day," I said, taking the money. I counted it right there in front of her. Then turned and walked away without a single look back. I boarded the first bus heading toward my friend's place and didn't let myself relax until I was back on his couch. It was going to be a sweet Christmas after all. Thanks to a lying, phony cheapskate. But that wasn't the end of it. About a week later, a friend called me. "Hey," he asked. "Is that crazy lady in the news the same one you got the double deposit from?" I was floored. Sure enough. It turned out Sharon had been running the same scam on a whole bunch of other people at the same time. I was mortified. It hit me immediately that the $900 I had wasn't her money. It was someone else's deposit. And now they were out of a home for the holidays because of me. My conscience got the better of me. And I went straight down to the police station. Just as the news suggested. There was a literal line of people. Many of them crying. All filing reports about being scammed by the same woman. I felt absolutely awful. When it was my turn, I walked up to the intake officer and laid out the entire story, how I fell for it. How I staked out the house. My demand for double the money. And my threats of legal action. I told the officer. I think I took some of the money that belonged to these other victims. She just looked at me and said, "Man, you were the only one smart enough to confront her in a reasonable way. You earned that money. Don't worry about it." As I was leaving, feeling a bit stunned, a young woman who was now homeless because of Sharon overheard my conversation and approached me. "Hey," she asked. "Did you get your money back from that bitch?" I replied sheepishly. "Actually, I got double my deposit back when I threatened her with the police." The girl blinked a couple of times. Then, a huge grin spread across her face. She started a slow clap. In the most unexpected turn of events, she announced to the entire lobby of miserable victims, "This guy took her for double the damage deposit." I cringed, bracing for their anger. Now, I know what you're thinking. Some might say there's no way a lobby full of scammed, heartbroken people would actually start clapping for someone who got his money back. But then there were others who saw the proof. The news stories that came out later. And they understood the moment for what it was. Because that's exactly what happened. The entire line of victims began to applaud. I guess in that moment, realizing that while their money was gone, someone had truly and thoroughly screwed the scammer over. Gave them a sense of joy. They cheered. The cops laughed. And all 20 of us in that lobby shared a cosmic moment of holiday schadenfreude at her expense. I walked out of that police station with a clean conscience, a smile on my face, and enjoyed every last penny of that nasty woman's money. The core lesson here is that knowing your rights and having the courage to act on them can lead to justice in the most unexpected ways. So, what would you have done if you were in my shoes and found out where the money likely came from? Let me know in the comments below.